who I was asking when I was buying this facility about business owners, and he said, you should really look into this. But business owners and contractors are great. They're hard on your facility, but you can budget for that. But they're great because they're sticky. And he said you only ever lose them when they outgrow you. And this was in regular self-storage. So you still 8-foot ceilings, not ideal for these guys, right? He says that they usually go to like 5,000 square foot warehouses or flex spaces, 3,500, 3,000, whatever they can find. They don't need that much, but they'll take what they can get because it didn't cost that much, that space back then. He said, but you should probably look into that. And he goes, have you heard of last mile warehouse? I was like, heard of it, but I don't know anything about it. He says, you should probably look into that because all of those contractors and those business owners, they're getting displaced by last mile warehouse.
Welcome to CRE Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is J. Darren Gross. This is the podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, it pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsurancerisk.com. Today, my guest is Joe Downs. Joe is a lifelong entrepreneur with business ventures spanning securities, mortgage, hospitality, and real estate industries. He co-founded the Belrose Group to pursue opportunities within the niche self-storage sector of commercial real estate. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Joe Downs about pro storage. What is it and why we need it? But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CRE Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Joe Downs. Welcome to CRE Radio.
Darren, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, if you could take just a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
All right, I'll try to condense it. Well, you kind of gave an inkling of it in the intro there, but I would say what I've learned, and actually learned this recently, is I learned I was an entrepreneur. It's one of those things where you can't see the forest from the trees. And when I look back at my background, in the last year or so, probably when I started doing podcasts as a guest and talking to folks like yourself, you put it all together and you realize, I was in securities and finance. I owned a bar and restaurant. I sold radio. But some of those things really led to real estate. Like when I was selling radio because I had a failed bar and restaurant and, fell flat on my face and I was broke. If you just have an open mind, you never know what the next door that's going to open is. And in my open mind was, hey, I need a job. I was selling radio. And along came two clients who were in real estate. And I always wanted to get involved in real estate. And that was my passion, even though I didn't know if it was passionate, but it was a pursuit, is a better way to say it, that I was interested in. But I stumbling block, which is, all up here, didn't really know or have the confidence to get involved until I was selling radio and two of my clients were in real estate. And one of them was selling mentorships. And so I scraped together some money and I bought a real estate mentorship and learned how to buy, rehab, and rent or flip single family homes in Philadelphia, or the Philadelphia area, mostly Philadelphia. And I was broke, so I didn't even do that. I was wholesaling first. And And then another client came along, maybe a year later, and I'm still selling radio, and I'm on weekends in the morning trying to find real estate. And I was still bartending, by the way, at night. I never stopped bartending, on weekends. And so I had three jobs. And then along came this other client who connected me. It was an indirect connection to a commercial real estate um, syndicator. He was buying multifamily and office buildings and syndicating them as 1031 exchanges. And they were done as securities. So he needed a guy with a securities license. I had one, and a sales guy. That was me. I didn't know anything about commercial real estate. I had to learn that part, and this is over 20 years ago. But you never know. So that led me to raising a lot of, I think $93 million over a couple of years for commercial real estate syndications. And then the market fell out from under us in 2008 and 9. I think we all remember that. And then I was reinventing again. So when I started off by saying I learned I'm an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs fall on their face sometimes, probably a lot more times than most, and they got to get back up and learn how to reinvent and figure it out. And so that's what led me to distressed debt, skipping the details. So, and I still have a company that buys distressed debt called U.S. Mortgage Resolution. But even in that company, there was a down cycle, and there was some regulations put in place for a period of years when banks weren't selling the debt. So fell on my proverbial face again, had to get back up. And that's what led me to finding self-storage. And hopefully I'm not falling on my face again. I don't think so. I think I've learned enough at this point. No, but we're in a really good spot in a great industry. And as I was telling you before the show, now we're even developing niches within self-storage. So that's kind of my background. Is I learned I'm a fighter and an entrepreneur, and I'm someone that's just not gonna fall down and stay down. So that's a little bit about me and how I got to where I am today.
No, I love the backstory there, and kind of filling in a little bit of the color. A lot of times the introductions are a kind of a high level thing, but just to get a little bit of a feel for really what that represents really kind of helps.
Yeah, a lot of lowlights in those highlights that you don't get to see or read.
Well, I mean, and that's fair, but I
Yeah,
think the conclusion that you're an entrepreneur and that every time you fall you get back up,
yeah,
and I think one of the things I've always loved about real estate is what I realized when I did my first deal was it's kind of like you get to make a deal that works for you, and if it doesn't work for you, you're not like stuck. You can find another deal, or but it's usually where a buyer and seller meet, and depending on what the seller's needs are, and what as a buyer, what think the property is worth somewhere, if those two things align, you can make a deal. And so to me, it's always been kind of the limits are your imagination. If you've only bought a house to live in, and you pulled the flyer out of the box, or the realtor took you to the place, and it was a hot market where everybody was bidding up the price, that's a totally different place than like an investor situation. And so anyway, I love hearing your backstory, and kind of getting a feel for who you are and how you got here.
yeah,
So let's talk a little bit. You mentioned self storage, and we want to talk about pro storage. But self storage, I mean, can you define that and then kind of compare that to what pro storage is?
yeah. In fact, the way I would describe pro storage is to start with self storage. So it's a great lead in. If you consider, and this is what we've had to kind of retrain our brains to consider, self storage internally, we actually refer to it more as retail storage. And the reason I say that is because it's really a B2C product. It's a business owner, right? The owners of the facilities, us in this case, and our customers, for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, are regular everyday consumers, right? So just people, not necessarily businesses. And I say for the most part because we do have some businesses that rent storage from us, because, in every city and every town in the country, there are businesses that need extra storage space. And they don't have a lot of options available to them. And So that's always a part of every self-storage facility. I promise you, every self-storage facility in this country has some element of a business owner using it for business purposes. But it's not ideal for most businesses. And so that's where the concept for us of pro storage came from. Now, we didn't invent it. We coined the term pro storage, and I'll tell you why. Um, and I'll tell you how it relates to, and there's a fine line between what we're doing and another buzzword. If you're in the real estate business and you're plugged in like you are, Darren, you've probably also heard small bay flex. And small bay flex is kind of one of the buzz terms, and it's real hot inside a real hot sector of industrial right now. Industrial warehousing is small bay flex. I'll get to that in a second. What happened with us is we've acquired 20 self-storage facilities over the course of the last 6 or 7 years. And one of them in Wilmington, North Carolina, was unlike all the others. And it wasn't our 20th acquisition, it was probably our 12th to 14th, somewhere in there, 12 to 14. I don't know the exact number. When we were doing our due diligence on it, we were kind of like we underwrote it like it was a self-storage facility with this kind of asterisk floating above our heads of this isn't self-storage. This thing's different. And how was it different? It was, from a satellite image, Google Maps, you look down and you zoom in on everything. Thank God for that, by the way, for our industry, and I'm sure every other commercial real estate industry. Or if you drove by it, to the naked eye, to the untrained eye, it just looks like self-storage. It's long buildings, bunch of garage doors. You would have to have a reference point to understand that these were bigger. And that reference point is either what we call a man door next to the roll-up door, or an actual car or a human being standing next to it. So in self-storage, our most common unit size, I always say that the two-bedroom apartment, if you will, of self-storage is the 10 by 10. A 10 by 10 is that. It's 10 feet by 10 feet, an 8-foot ceiling with a 7.5-foot roll-up door, right? So it's 100 square feet. That's your most common size. Do we have sizes bigger? Yeah, we got 200, 300, but they're more like the 4-bedroom apartment, right? You might have them, but not many. All right. Not every facility has them. If you do have them, there's a few of them. Pro storage, our smallest size is 450 square feet with a 14-foot ceiling and a 12.5-foot roll-up door, such that you can drive a truck with ladders and equipment on top, or an RV. And you know how tall an RV is, or a boat on a trailer, or really anything on a trailer. So when we bought this facility in Wilmington, North Carolina, it was called M2 Maxi. It was built by a plumber for his needs. And then he just kept expanding it because he had contractor friends galore. It's in an industrial park. And he ended up getting up to 60,000 square feet of what he called contractor storage. Now, you go around the country, we've been looking for them. We've almost bought a couple more. We still haven't found one we can negotiate and buy. There's not that many of them. They're called different things: contractor storage, big storage, monster storage, large format storage. I've seen all kinds of names. When we went to replicate it, we realized the genius of it, and there's another backstory to it. I'll say it quick. We wanted to go build boat and RV facilities because they're amazing cash cows too. But we realized after striking out left and right, the NIMBY effect was in play there. They're not in my backyard. Municipalities hate them. So we were back to the drawing board going, how do we meet this demand for boat and RVs? Because there's 700,000 of them delivered every year to consumers, and only about average of 30,000 new parking spots for them. So you have this huge delta of supply and demand. Municipalities don't want them. How do you fulfill this? And then one day I'm looking at our facility in Wilmington going, 20% of our customers there are boat and RVs. So I was like, why don't we just go build more of these? And then we started doing research on it. Is this viable at other locations? Is it only because we're here? And then that led to a lot of research and a conversation I had with one of my local advisors, if you will, who I was asking when I was buying this facility about business owners. And he said, you should should really look into this. But business owners and contractors are great. They're hard on your facility, but you can budget for that. But they're great because they're sticky. And he said, you only ever lose them when they outgrow you. And this was in regular self-storage. So you still 8 foot ceilings, not ideal for these guys, right? He says that they usually go to like 5,000 square foot warehouses or flex spaces, 3,500, 3,000, whatever they can find. They don't need that much, but they'll take what they can get because it didn't cost that much, that space back then. He said, but you should probably look into that. And he goes, have you heard of last mile warehouse? I was like, heard of it, but I don't know anything about it. He says, you should probably look into that because all of those contractors and those business owners, they're getting displaced by last mile warehouse. The Amazons and the Walmarts are gobbling up all the infill locations. So, so all this is happening at the same time. We start doing research on it, and that's when we really dug deep on last mile warehouse and learned, oh my goodness, there's a paradigm shift that's happening, not coming, happening right now. And we're all guilty as consumers of participating in it. Because I don't know about you, but we probably average 4 to 5 packages delivered every day to our front door, right? Some days more, some days less, but that's probably our average. And they're not stuff we ordered a month ago. They're stuff we ordered maybe today, maybe yesterday, probably no more than a few days ago. And then what that also led to is research that says, and this is the most amazing stat of all, today, Amazon and Walmart, the two largest retailers or retailers, what do they call themselves? Two largest logistics companies at this point, or users of logistics companies. They know today, if you order something by a certain cutoff point today, but it's 11:30 a.m. where I am. I know it's earlier for you. I don't know what the cutoff is. Call it 2 p.m. If I order something today or you order something today within that window, if we can't get it by tomorrow, Darren, they're losing 25% of their sales. That is an astronomical number for them. So they need to be able to deliver whatever we order today within their cutoff by tomorrow. That same number, they're projecting next year. So whatever today is, fast forward to 2026, they're projecting that number, that same 25% loss of sales, to be same day delivery. If we can't, we as consumers are demanding products like now. That demand is having direct and indirect effects on the availability of existing warehouse space, regardless of the size. So the old users of those space that might have been paying 10, 11, 12 bucks a foot triple net, those rents are now 18, 19, 20, $22 a foot. So the same contractors that left storage for warehouse for space they didn't need are now getting squeezed out. So you have them looking for space. You've got cottage new industries popping up that are using technology and Amazon as platforms for their business, needing space. So that's why you're seeing the small bay flex world blow up right now. And that's why we're introducing what we call pro storage. Why'd we change the name? Because in our facility in Wilmington, we've got contractors, boats and RVs. We've got businesses. Think of like a catering company who needs a retail spot where they probably pay 25 to 30 bucks a foot to be in a strip center with the nice office where they meet the bride and groom and they sell the wedding or the event or whatever it is they're selling. But they don't need to pay 25, 30 bucks a foot to store racks of glasses and dishes and tables and chairs. They need warehouse space for that. So that's just one use case, but you've got businesses that need storage. You've got contractors that need storage for their business. You've got boats and RVs everywhere that need storage and can't find parking spots. Ask anyone you know that owns a boat and particularly an RV, where they store it, how much they pay, and if they don't store it somewhere, how long is the waiting list to store it there? I bet you it's a year, right? So we had all these things, all these use cases in one facility in Wilmington. And I was like, I can't call this contractor storage if we're going to go build it. So we came up with the name Pro Storage. By the way, I tried to trademark it and I can't because the digital storage guys already got there first. So we came up with a brand name, Store Pro. So that's what we're building, Store Pro. But we coined the term, at least we're calling it Pro Storage.
No, I appreciate that, and it's funny because I think of like by day I'm an insurance broker, and the number of clients I have that are in a small, and it's like a self storage kind of facility, but it's like you described. It's got the man door, and it's also got the roll up door, and it's funny because I don't know, are there any? I mean, you talked about the flex space, the size, but it's like I know one guy I've got, he outgrew the one space to where he ended up taking their spaces are back to back, so he took the space behind him, and then he took the one next to him, and so he's got like probably four or five of the bays, and because that space is fairly flexible, they were able to make, cut throughs, doors to go through, passageways to get through from one side to the other. You don't ever have to leave and go out and around kind of thing. But yeah, I mean something that's larger like that, but it does look like self-storage, only slightly taller.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was going to ask you too about like the finishes, because I think of the self-storage. Um, I don't know that there's always power. I mean, the newer, nicer ones are temperature or climate controlled and all that, but I think a lot of them are still just kind of there's a garage door, you open it up. Um, there may be light, there may not be light. I'm going to say more often there's not light. It's more about the daylight. When you open the door, what you can see is in the bay.
Yeah.
And I can't think that there's any plumbing. But I'm guessing with your pro storage model, that may be more, there may be some higher level of need for utilities or amenities.
Yeah, great. You know what? Great segue into explaining our product and how it differs from small bay. So, and you hit the nail on the head there. What we realized is we're going to have different use cases because we have that in Wilmington already. And we have different unit sizes in Wilmington. I think we 450 up to like 950, and there might be one or two unit sizes in between. So we copied that formula with what we're developing. Our first development's in Greenville, South Carolina. It's underway. We've got unit sizes from 450, I think, or something, maybe 440, something like that on the low end, to 1,000 square feet with a couple different unit sizes in between. Um, Power optional, so it'll be there. If you need power, it's a cover charge. We can't charge you for power in any state. There's a, regulatory, where there's regulations with that. But we can charge a cover charge, meaning turn the switch on or off. Does it work or not? Lighting will be in every unit. Do you need climate? We'll have that in some units. So we're building 90,000 square feet, 135, I think, units. So some will have power, lighting, climate control, heat, AC. Some won't. It'll be available everywhere. That'll be up to the consumer or the business owner to choose. Um, we won't have bathrooms in units. We are designed as storage. So we don't expect anyone working in our units, meaning working all day. We fully expect a contractor to even have a desk in there, come in the morning, line up the jobs for the day, maybe do some quick billing. We'll have Wi-Fi on premise. So maybe you do a little bit of billing for an hour or two here or there, but there won't be a bathroom in his unit. We will have a clubhouse that has a community bathroom for the facility, a place for you to meet clients, host an event, a couple 100 square feet, fairly nice sized clubhouse. But it's not designed like small bay flex is for you to have an office with some employees there, parking spots. In a traditional small bay flex, let's say you took the same unit size, 1,000 square feet compared to our biggest, which is 1,000 square feet. You might have 200 square feet of office and 800 square feet of flex. Small bay flex, by the way, 1,000 would be on the smaller end. They're typically going up to 2,500, so between 1,000 and 2,500 square feet. So it's a little more space, probably has office, probably has a bathroom in it, definitely has power, and definitely expects you to work there, whether it's in the office or maybe you're a machinist or a carpenter and you're doing what you're doing in your unit. They are designed for that, and there is definitely a need for that. In addition to what we're doing, difference to us is the build. There's a fine line between the two. It's very fine. Our use and occupancy is different. What costs less to build what we're building, and we're more flexible. Small bay flex, ideally, if you own that, if you're the landlord, you're trying to sign 3-year leases, all right, with escalations, and it's triple net. That's nice when you're on that side of that fine line. The downside to the consumer, the business owner, the entrepreneur that's starting out that needs the space is kind of what you just nailed. If your friend, I think you said it was a friend, rented that space, it's nice that he had space to expand into, but what do those leases look like and what do those commitments look like? We're storage. We're still month to month. So you can move into our smallest unit, start your business, decide you need another or bigger, move across the parking lot from your 450 square foot unit to the 1,000 square foot unit. You don't skip a beat. It costs you a weekend to move. You're still, your rent went up for the bigger size unit, but you're in the same place. There's no, there's very little disruption to your business, or maybe you're seasonal and you've got 1,000 square feet and you only need another 500 square feet for 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. We're an option. So we're trying to be the flexible, business friendly option for entrepreneurs, business owners that don't need to work in their unit. Maybe you're a contractor, an electrician that does your billing from home, or has a third party that you're virtual, especially today with everybody's virtual. I don't know about you, but I've got VAs in Philippines, Kenya right now that are working on my business right now. So I don't, even the office I'm sitting in, we don't need much more. I don't know how much more hiring we'll do with people that live and work in Wayne, Pennsylvania, right? So we're finding that with the paradigm shift that's also happening in how we work and all the solo entrepreneurs that are being created, right? So we believe, and we know because it's working in Wilmington, and we're almost always full. And we have competition down there. It's interesting. That's a little market that's like a petri dish we get to study and see what works and doesn't work. We believe this will work everywhere. And by the way, I also believe small bay flex will work everywhere too, and they can coexist because it's 80, 90% the same use. It's that last 10 or 20%, which is up to the business owner slash consumer to decide, do I need to pay more for this or am I good with this option? So a great question, and thank you for that perfect lead into allowing me to explain what we are and how we differ, but also the crossover between that and small bay flex.
Yeah, and I appreciate you kind of making the comparison there because I had kind of blurred the line a little bit between. I was probably thinking more of like a flex space, but the small bay storage. I know I've got other clients that are in some of the smaller, and it like I said, it looks like a self storage thing, but it's primarily contractors.
Yeah.
Um, and they're either parking, landscaping equipment in the bay or I think one guy I know does some woodworking, kind of. I mean, he's some sort of a carpenter thing. He'll if he needs to create a piece, he'll do it right there, then or store the wood or materials there, kind of thing, and then take them to the job site. But it's I think a couple things that seem to work is probably the cost is very affordable.
Yeah.
Um, and it allows you to separate it from your residence. You're not like keeping stuff in the driveway or in the garage or whatever.
Because you might live in an HOA that doesn't allow you to put your wood in
Right,
the driveway or
right.
the
Or you
street.
may have a spouse, somebody doesn't want that there.
Or
Uh,
that, or hey, how
yeah.
many how many tools and vans are broken into because they're in a neighborhood or on the street, right? So now it's safe
Right,
and secure overnight. Yeah.
right. Um, but I wanted to ask you, so a couple things, we talked about like the level of amenities, meaning like plumbing, electric, and all that, and heat. What about security? Is there like some sort of a gate into the parks, or how are you set up that way?
Yeah, and whether it's self-storage or pro storage, one of the first things we do, whether we're buying or building it, is lighting and security. That means everything. So we make sure unless there's some prevailing reason that says we don't need to be, we are fenced, gated, well lit, and cameraed everywhere. We want to see every angle of that facility. We want to present that we are secure, well lit, and not a place that somebody wants to rob. In fact, we had this was at a self-storage facility, but I remember we had someone break in, and because the cameras alert our managers on their phones to activity at night after certain hours, when it's not expected, they were able to not only call 911 right then and there, but communicate over a loudspeaker to the intruders that the police were on the way. So lighting, security, all very important to us. Not just for us, but for our customers. And we want our customers to know whether they're consumers or businesses. Hey, we can't control who's going to try to break in, but we are doing everything we can to mitigate it. And even if they get away with something quickly before the police got there, we've got them and their license plate on camera, and they've been caught every time. That doesn't happen all the time, but and anytime it has happened, we've had 20 facilities that happens here and there, but um, every time they happen, they're nailed. You can't get one over on us. There's no blind spots.
Got it. So let me ask you this: where are these typically located? Um, I mean, is it? I'm assuming the ones you're buying are probably more. Uh, well, they may have been out on the fringe, and the developments come out to them, or are you finding opportunities to build, uh, inside the city limits? Or are you having to go on the outside, or where are you finding the opportunities?
So we're talking about pro storage because we haven't developed self-storage. We've only acquired self-storage. We've expanded, but we've never done a ground up self-storage development. But even then, and this will be the same answer for both for different reasons. We're mostly in secondary and tertiary markets. Why? Because I have a saying I heard years ago, and I love it. If you want to beat Tiger Woods at something, you can. Just don't play him in golf. So our Tiger Woods in our industry is public, cube smart, extra space, and a whole number of institutional players that you would never have heard of because they fly under different brand names. We don't try to compete with them. So where don't we compete with them? We don't compete with them. We buy smaller facilities and they're typically buying, and probably those are located typically in a secondary or tertiary town. The same principle holds true with development. Where can you find land that you can afford that pencils with the development and the rates you can get for when you develop it? So I'm sitting in the suburbs of Philadelphia. Not in my wildest dreams do I expect to find dirt within 30 minutes of downtown Philadelphia, which is a major primary market, that I'm going to be able to buy that I can afford, that's going to warrant development of pro storage. I might be wrong. I I don't think I've seen a model yet that works. So where are we? Greenville, South Carolina is the first one. There's still a lot of land there in a booming city. I mean, that's the fastest growing town I think in the country. There's still affordable land there. We found land. We're under contract in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey, which I'm shocked that we were able to find. Got a great deal on because that's right outside of Atlantic City, right where Route 9, which goes north and south up New Jersey, the major thoroughfare, well, one of the two major thoroughfares, 95 being the other. Route 9 comes right down New Jersey into the Jersey Shore and meets the Atlantic City Expressway, which comes directly out of Philadelphia. So we're right there at that clover leaf. Shocked we were able to find dirt like that. But that's, Atlantic City is a secondary market, you could argue tertiary market even, to Philadelphia and New York, being about an hour from Philly and an hour and a half from New York. So, that's probably one of the better markets we'll be in. But yeah, it comes down to where can you buy land that you're going to be able to make and the pro forma pencil such that you can build these things. And then demand is everywhere, by the way. So I'm working on this model. I'm trying to figure out an urban model because I know there's dilapidated buildings still in Philadelphia, and I know there's contractors and businesses in Philadelphia that need more storage. We're still working on that model. Haven't been able to make it work yet, but where we are today, getting this thing kicked off with developing and trying to build this brand of pro storage is we're starting in secondary and tertiary markets and going from there.
Got it. And as far as the development and the size of the opportunities, you mentioned the one, I think you said you're building 135 units, 90,000 square feet. Is that kind of a sweet spot, or is there kind of a
Yeah, that's
range of?
exactly what it is.
Okay,
So we know at least at this stage of our development with who we're using as GCs, we know we want to be at least 80,000 because you're starting to take into account economies of scale, right? And we know in the market we're in, we believe we'll fill it. We have a high level of confidence based on Wilmington. Um, so that's that sweet spot. Now, then there it's, well, how many acres do you need for that? And that depends on how usable the acres are, right? So the number, depending on the usability of the acreage and, how much do we need for water retention? Do we have to give it up? Could we put it underneath, et cetera? We're in the kind of 7 to 9 acre for the two parcels we have now. Um, so it's a question of, can you go smaller? That's the model I'm working on because there's no way you're finding 7 to 9 acres in the city of Philadelphia, for example. So I'm trying to figure out what kind of model can work on a smaller parcel from a design build standpoint. Not there yet. And that may be not having the confidence. In fact, it is not having the confidence that we can get the rate that we think we need to warrant the development and the acquisition of land. But right now we're in that, like I said, that 7 to 9 and that 90,000. I think at one point we had a model that worked at 110, but the land didn't support it. We would go bigger if we could find bigger parcels and we felt it was warranted. But it's kind of that right now our model is dictating at least 80. So that's where we're at that 90 because that's what that parcel will allow us to. The more the merrier, obviously up until a certain point.
Got it. And just again, for clarification, I assume this to be the case, but given the clientele you're going after, these are all one-story uh, facilities.
Well, the nature of pro storage is it would have to be one story, right? You're
Right.
looking what we will describe to the users as a benefit is you can drive your vehicle in.
Right.
So unless we're getting into parking garage type of scenarios where you're driving up, I don't think that would pencil. Yeah, it's all going to be one story drive-in. I will tell you, um, we are working on a model where, and I don't think I've seen anybody do this yet, where you see 4-story climate control buildings of self-storage. There's no reason that first floor couldn't be pro storage with just a higher ceiling height. Because if I'm a consumer using the self-storage, even if I'm on the first floor, rarely do they have outside garage doors, right? It's usually you're parking your car, loading a cart, and going inside anyway. So once you're going inside and going through those gymnastics, and most of those people are taking an elevator to the second, third, or fourth floor, if they're 4 floors, which they usually are. What's the difference? So one of the models I am looking at is building a first floor of pro storage and then self above it. So that's a kind of a combo model there, but that's I think probably a moneymaker. We just haven't found the right parcel in the right area because that now you need to make sure the demand's going to be there for pro storage, which I think it's going to be everywhere, frankly. But also, I'm adding how many square feet of self storage to that market. So I have to take into consideration what that supply index is, and are we oversupplying the market, or is it an undersupplied market, and what would the absorption rate of the new supply we just introduced? So it's not a slam dunk model; it's market specific, but it's definitely a model, and we're looking at.
So speaking of models and markets and all that, are you kind of defining or kind of doing the research now to figure out what exactly is a good fit, or are you recognizing that everywhere you put these, it's just demand is unlimited?
I'm going to be careful how I answer this. I wouldn't say demand's unlimited, um, but here's what I do know. We own 60,000 square feet of what we call pro storage and functions as pro storage in a market that has 300,000 square feet of the same product. And you can't find that anywhere else in the country. So I call that my little petri dish. I I know a lot about that market because we participate in it. So I do believe this works everywhere because I don't think you can find it everywhere. Just like in self-storage, I think there's a supply index for pro storage. No one's developed it yet because there's no data on it yet. We're developing it. And I know it's at least X because it's at least that in Wilmington. So my general don't hold me to it response is I think it works everywhere. We're testing that right now. As I shouldn't say everywhere. I I know I firmly believe it will work everywhere. I can replicate at least what I have in Wilmington in terms of population, median household income, poverty, crime, a whole bunch of other demographic statistics. If I find that in other markets, I'm highly confident it'll work. I found that in Greenville. I found that in Egg Harbor Township, which is just outside of Atlantic City.
So there was something you mentioned earlier, kind of the NIMBY kind of thing about storage. I- Given that this is quote pro storage, i- are you received differently at the municipalities when you approach them for permits? I mean, obviously you said you're working in secondary and tertiary markets, which are going to be a little easier to work with.
Not
But
necessarily.
well, I mean, the assumption is, uh, the, are you finding a more warm reception than if you said you're building self-storage, or is it considered the
Vers-
same kind of product?
Versus self-storage or
Right.
versus some other product. So, because the NIMBY remark was about boat and RV storage. So versus self-storage, I would say there's no difference. I
Okay.
don't think the municipalities look at it any different. And the reason is they're metal boxes with doors that close. So the only thing they're asking us to do, which I see any other self-storage developer have to go through, is they want to see, not everywhere, but in some places, they want to see prettier facades, right? We've all
Right.
seen the self-storage facilities that are like, you're not even sure it's self-storage because they're gorgeous on the outside, right? And then you've seen most of what I own in my portfolio, which is the old stock product, which is clearly not pretty on the outside. They're just metal boxes, right? The difference with the boat and RV and the NIMBY, not in my backyard, is I'll just give you the quick skinny on it. The reason the municipalities hate boat and RV facilities, the parking lots, whether there's canopies or not, is because we own one in Minnesota, and it wasn't until we bought the one in Minnesota that I understood what they mean. If you don't require, as a manager of an owner of a boat and RV facility, and this would be an exposed, whether it's three-sided canopy or nothing, if it's just a parking lot, gravel parking lot, fully exposed. If you don't require all the vehicles on that lot to be road or seaworthy, I guess, at all times, you will quickly devolve into a junkyard
Yeah.
because the guy that's parking his $200,000 RV doesn't want to be and won't stay very long next to the 50,000 or once $50,000 jalopy of an RV. Think of the Uncle Eddie RV from Christmas Vacation that is rat or mice infested, right? Squirrel infested, because then they make their way over to yours and they find their
Yeah.
way in. So those vehicles will leave, and if they're boats, it's even worse because they get in and destroy boats even faster. So your good customers will leave your facility because of your bad customers, and they're only bad customers because you allowed that situation to exist and to devolve.
Yeah.
And that's why municipalities hate them. And let me tell you something, what we own in Minnesota is an open air gravel parking lot. And there's some that aren't so great looking in there. They're not rat or mice, but we're on top of that for Matt. But I completely understand where they're coming from now because that'll go quickly,
Yeah.
right? In our situation, they pull in to a metal box, shut the door. No one's the wiser as what's behind that door. And that also means there's no animals getting in there. And so, not say it's impossible, but it's highly unlikely that the same situation would happen, and certainly wouldn't happen as fast if it did happen to one boat or RV. So that's the real differentiator from a pro storage to self storage. I don't even think they know the difference.
Gotcha. A couple more questions here. Financing. Are the lenders any issues with financing for this type of product?
No difference. Self storage, pro storage, they could
Oh,
care
good.
less.
Okay. Operating. Are you guys the operators of these facilities, or do you sub that out, or how do you do that?
We are, and we're intending to be, although we might place it with a third party because we're actually probably moving our whole portfolio over to a third party. Um, it used to be that the third party managers at our size facility got 40,000 square feet and below. I know I said our pro storage was 60, but most of the others are, we have one that's 60, the rest are all 40,000 and smaller. It used to be 5, 6 years ago that the managers, the third party managers, that they weren't worth it. They didn't have, they just didn't, they didn't manage those facilities well. They didn't care about them better as well as you could manage your own, even by using kind of hybrid third parties. Um, Now they've surpassed what we can do. So we're probably making that transition. They're doing it better than we are. I mean, it's evolved over time. A lot of reasons, a lot to do with that is technology. So the pro storage though, uh, it's a dream to manage. In self-storage, your typical delinquency, a really well-run facility, I mean like one of the best, your delinquency is probably 2%, 2 to 4%. Average is probably 6 to 8. Um, so that means your staff is collecting, making calls, trying to get, and then if you can't get people to pay, now you're in the auction process. So it's taxing on your resources of a personnel. Our pro storage we've owned for 2 years down in Wilmington. I think our delinquency rate when we bought it was 0, and it is still 0. There's there's nothing to now. If you think about it, why? In self-storage, what are you storing?
Stuff you don't want, or that you, I
Uh,
mean, it's out of
You're
sight, out of mind kind of
you're
thing.
but they might be treasures to you, Darren, but they're crap to anybody else.
Right,
In pro
right,
storage, and so what's it worth? Couple hundred bucks?
right.
In pro storage, they're storing tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory and equipment and vehicles.
That makes
So
some money.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
there's
I
no
get
such
it.
thing as delinquency.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Hey, Joe, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. As I
Yeah.
mentioned, by day, I'm an insurance broker. And as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's three strategies we typically consider. We first look to see if we can avoid the risk. When that's not an option, we look to see if we can minimize the risk. And if we cannot avoid nor minimize the risk, we look to see if we can transfer the risk. And that's what an insurance policy is. It's a risk transfer vehicle. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. It could be your clients, the municipalities you deal with, lenders, whatever it is that you identify and consider to be the biggest risk. And again, for clarification, while I'm an insurance broker, I'm not necessarily looking for an insurance related answer. And so, if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Joe Downs, what is the biggest risk?
Um, to me, I'll give you I'll give you all right, you just want the biggest. I'm gonna go right to the biggest. To me, it's change. It's sort of what I just alluded to. If we were if we still thought because we weren't out there interviewing and investigating other third-party management companies, if we refused to do all that and just head in the sand, we would probably start falling behind other storage facilities, other competitors who are managing their facilities better than we are. And the reason for that is because of technology. And I alluded to that earlier. And so that's just a small example. But to me, the biggest reason is AI. The single biggest reason is of change. The biggest change agent is AI. So if we're not, and you might say, well, what does AI have to do with storage? Everything, because AI can infiltrate if you allow it and choose to, and I highly suggest you do, every every part of your business and life, AI can have an impact on, positive or negative. So you have to be not only aware, you have to be in tune. So I worry about if you're asking what keeps me up at night, it's not we're well insured from an insurance standpoint, right? Um, I think when you're in commercial real estate, there's always that lender risk of a covenant and a loan doc somewhere, whatever. But that doesn't keep me up at night. It's because even then you can negotiate and you got attorneys to work you out of it. To me, it's falling behind the AI curve. And because that will directly impact how we find customers, how we source deals. In Pro Storage, I'm using it not only to source locations for properties better and faster than we can do on our own. Um, we're creating a GPT right now to market to the businesses, the 17,000 businesses in Greenville, South Carolina, that are within 10 miles of our facility. I don't think we've gone vertical yet. The ground's cleared and I think they're getting ready for pad sites. Maybe they started pouring. I haven't seen an update in a week, but we've got to fill that facility. So how are we going to do that before all the small bay flex guys get the word out that they're available to receive your business? Well, we came up with an ingenious way to create a GPT that's a relocator. So a GPT is just anyone can create them if you learn how to on ChatGPT. It's GPT it stands for generative. Um, now I'm gonna freeze when I put myself in the spot. Now I'm freezing. Uh, Generative performance transformer? No, pre-trained. Generative pre-trained transformer. So it's really just an engine. It's the greatest employee that you could ever have, right? It doesn't need to sleep, eat, take breaks, anything. It does what you tell it to do, but that's the key. It does what you tell it to do. If you don't tell it to do it, it won't do it. So we have created a GPT that we will put out in front of every business. We'll market to all the businesses out there and say, hey, if you're looking for space, here is a here is a simple tool that's free. Put in your name of your business, where you are, where you'd like to be, square footage you need for space in the entire Greenville market area. It will then, because we'll program it, go on Crexy, LoopNet, everything. It'll find all the space that's available that meets the criteria for Darren Gross to move his ABCXYZ widget business because he's got 1,000 square feet now and he needs 2,000, or he's got 500 or no square feet and he needs something, right? It'll return those results for you. And included in it will be our facility with all kinds of unit sizes. So there's an example of how we're using AI to not only source the location, but also source the customers that'll fill the location, right? So, and that if I was asleep at the wheel with AI, I wouldn't have any of that. Maybe I'd be successful regardless. I don't know. Maybe if you build it, they will come principle would happen. I don't know, but I'm not willing to risk it. I'm not willing to risk it with my investors' money. So to me, I'm harnessing the power of AI. It is absolutely incredible. It keeps me up at night for good reasons. And I told you before the show, because it's like a drug. It literally, you know the saying, if you dream it, you can make it happen, or whatever that cliche is. This is literally AI literally makes it happen. And it's just up to you to program it. So I'm excited about it, even though you asked me what's a risk. The risk is not staying up with, not learning it, not immersing yourself in AI, because if you don't, I know everything I just said sounds cool and proactive, but if I'm not proactive, someone else will be, and they might be, and I don't care what you're doing, what business you're in, someone who's doing what I'm doing is going to have a direct effect on your business, probably to the negative if you don't not only get ahead of the curve, but keep up. So to me, that's the biggest risk. It's kind of that standing still and not evolving.
No, you're definitely making a good case for getting to know and be more familiar with and how to use Chat
20,
GPT
20 bucks a
for your
month.
for your advantage as opposed to having it being used against you and wondering why it's things are doing what they're doing. So I get it. I get it.
And it's not too late. You're ahead of the curve if you start now.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So, all right. Well, hey, Joe, where can the listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
Email me. Love communicating. Either email, we can set up a time to talk if you're interested in learning about how to get into storage. We've got deals that aren't fully subscribed. Not many. Not There's not much room left. I can show you how to get into storage. I teach at a self storage academy. But email me, joe@belroseam.com. I'll say it slow and spell it. It's Joe, Joe, at Belrose, BEL BELROSEAM, A as an asset, M as a management. So 1L, BELROSE, A as an asset, M as a management.com. Shoot me an email. I'll set up an appointment I'll have my assistant set up an appointment. We can communicate via email. We can talk, up to you. And talk about whatever you want. I'm a storage junkie, so we'll just groove.
Awesome. Well, Joe Downs, I cannot say thanks enough for taking the time to talk today. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Darren, it's been an honor, a privilege, and I humbly say thank you for having me.
You got it. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.